All right, everyone, we're going to be talking about inflation. Inflation. Now, what is inflation? Well, inflation, generally speaking, is when prices rise. So, when prices go up in the economy, for whatever reason, what that means is the value of your money is going down. All right? So, what's happening is the prices rise. That means your money doesn't go as far as what it did before. You have to use more dollars to buy the exact same things as what you did previously. So let's say that something last year cost, I don't know, $5, and now in order to buy the exact same thing, it requires $7. Well, the value of the thing itself didn't change. What changed was the amount of money you need in order to be able to buy it. So what changed was the value of the money. So the money doesn't go as far as what it used to. It cuts into your purchasing power or your buying power. You'll see this called either way. All right? So inflation has occurred. Now, if this happens throughout the entire economy with all prices, then price levels have risen. It's not just going to be the price of one thing or a couple of things, it'll be the prices of just about everything. Okay, so when price levels rise within the economy, that means we're experiencing inflation, which means your money is not worth as much as what it was before. Now, you have the reverse of this, which is deflation. Deflation is going the other direction. Deflation is when prices are going down in the economy. Price levels are lowering, which means your money goes further than what it did previously. You're able to buy more with your money than what you could before. Your purchasing power, your buying power is increased. Now, this might seem like a good thing, but there's actually problems with that, but I'm not going to get into that stuff. But here's an example of inflation. Let's see what the price of coffee has done over the years, right? So in 1970, it cost 25 cents for your average cup of coffee, plain black coffee, right? So none of this fancy super mocha frappe latte stuff, whatever. So 25 cents for a cup of basic coffee in 1970. And by the time you get to, 1980, it's 45 cents, 1990, 75 cents, 2000, $1, 2010, $1.25, 2019, $1.59. Well, the value of the coffee itself didn't change. The coffee is coffee, right? For the most part, what we're seeing here is a result of inflation over time changing the price of the coffee. And you can see this in many other areas as well, right? So cars, notebooks, all sorts of things where prices have risen over time because the value of the money has gone down. Okay? Now, how do we measure these changes in the value of the money? We do a price index. A price index is just a standardized way of comparing one year to another one. So, price index, you always have a base year you start off with. So, you could have, say, 1990 as a base year, 2000 a base year, or 2020 as a base year. You usually go with the latest year's dollars as your base year price index. The price index would always be 100. So that's a way of saying something that costs $100 in 2020 would have a price index of 100, right? Or a price index of 100 means something that costs $100 in 2020, right? So if 2020 is your base year, there you go. Now, let's say that in 2021, the price index goes to 110. All right. Well, that's a way of saying that whatever cost $100 in 2020, in 2021 would require $110 to be able to buy. All right. And if we talk about inflation rate, the inflation rate is the percent change in these indexes. So if you go from 100 to 110, that's a 10% difference, right? So that would mean we have a 10% inflation rate. Prices rose 10% from 2020 to 2021. Okay. Now, the biggest price index that we usually look at is called the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. And what that looks at is what does the typical urban consumer buy? So, a typical city dweller, or can even include suburban dwellers in there, what is it they typically spend money on? How much do they spend money on groceries? How much do they spend money on transportation, medical costs, and various other things? All right. So, the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, tracks all this. And imagine you have a market basket, right? So imagine there's like a consumer mart. And so the BLS walks in there with their shopping cart and they pile in the cart everything the typical consumer buys at Consumer Mart, right? And so they look at what the prices are for each one of those goods, and then they go to the cash register, they check out, and see what the total bill is for that market basket, for that total amount of stuff that they have in their shopping cart. Okay? And so the next month, they come back to Consumer Mart, put all the exact same things in the shopping cart, in the market basket, and look at what the prices are for that month. And then they check out and see how much the market basket costs in the following month. Well, if it's all the exact same stuff and everything in the shopping cart costs more the next month than what it did the previous month, well, that means we've experienced inflation. All right? So the price index will have gone up, it will have changed, and inflation has occurred. The money is not worth as much, your dollar doesn't go as far, and you have eroded purchasing power. Yeah, now, what does inflation occur? Well, you got a few theories. One of them is called the quantity theory. The idea here is simply that whoever is in charge of the money is making too much of it. Right? So for the United States, it's not the government, it would be the Federal Reserve. So that would mean the Federal Reserve is creating too much money. In other countries, it might be that the government is creating too much money. More money means that you have more money out there in circulation, right? So more people have more money. What do people do with more money? They spend it. And when they spend more money, then that causes prices to go up because you're increasing demand. All right? You have the cost push theory. What happens here is that for one reason or another, costs are pushing prices upwards because it's costing more to make stuff. So that means businesses are raising their prices in order to accommodate the increased costs. It could be the wages are going up for some reason, like let's say you had a big spike in the minimum wage. It could be that an input cost like oil is costing more, something like this. The demand pull theory is going to say the demand is pulling up prices upwards. So if people are demanding products more than what they did before, then that pulls prices up. You get demand pull inflation there. It's not necessarily because of more money out there in circulation. It could just be because panic buying or popularity or something like that, right? So quantity theory, too much money is being produced, cost push, costs are pushing prices upwards, and demand pull, demand and buying is pulling the prices up. All right, so you got that little thing right there. All right, now what are the effects of inflation? What are the problems here? First of all, it takes away your purchasing power, right? It makes your money not worth as much, which means you can't buy as much as what you did before, which means it can also cut into your standard of living because you can't buy as much as what you were able to previously with that same amount of money, right? Not only that, but interest rates become a problem. If you're a saver, let's say you're saving at, say, 5% interest, which, I mean, you're not going to get that now, but let's say we're saving at 5% interest and there's 7% inflation, the money is losing value faster than what you're getting it in interest from your savings. So you're actually coming out behind because of this, all right? Or let's say your income. Well, if inflation is happening, but your income remains the same, you're effectively not making as much value as what you did before. So let's say that I'm making $50,000 a year, right? But there's 10% inflation. All right, and the next year I'm still making $50,000 a year, and the year after that I'm making $50,000 a year. But that 10% inflation is cutting into the value of that $50,000. I'm still making $50,000, but the value of it each year is becoming less and less. I'm not making as much value as what I was before. Right, and if things go really crazy and haywire, you can have hyperinflation. So this happened in the Weimar Republic in Germany, or shortly after WW1. They started printing massive amounts of currency, and inflation just skyrocketed to the point that money became virtually worthless. Right, you can look at fun pictures from this time period of kids playing with cash, right, blocks of cash, or people making kites out of cash, or wallpapering a room with cash, or burning cash, right, whatever, simply because the money was so worthless at that point. That people didn't care. Right? And there's an article here if you want to go to that. I don't think it's linked in the PowerPoint, but it shows you Venezuelan hyperinflation and how much money is required to buy just really basic stuff, right? Where you have to have a stack of cash of, I think it was something like 2.2 million bolivars to buy a roll of toilet paper, all right? And that was as of 2 years ago. It's gotten even worse since then. All right, so that's a general overview of inflation.